What's that?
Sorry. I said I could go sit next to the bear.
Oh no, I think the deer heads are a lot better because he's an absolute whitetail slayer. I think that's
Perfect.
kind of what he's known for.
It asked for my permission for you to record me. Okay.
I've never had that before. Okay, here we go. So I guess I probably ought to start with like the story of what happened. I guess for the people just listening too, I should probably introduce you again. So welcome back, Mom.
Hi, Lisa Traynor.
Okay.
Mom.
Yeah, Mom. So about, I don't know, it's probably the end of December, started having a lot of problems sleeping regularly. Like it wasn't that bad then, but like there'd be, occasional nights where I'd wake up at 4 a.m. or 6 a.m. And that'd only be like 4 or 5 hours of sleep for me at that time. And I didn't really know why. I would wake up kind of hot a lot of times. So at first I thought that the heat was bothering me, like the heat being on the house, since it kind of, had been warm through most of December. I remember during rifle season, there was one night I took an Instagram story video of me and Dad hunting in shorts. So it didn't really get cold until like towards the end of December. But yeah, so it was just kind of intermittent then. And then once January came around, it was a lot more routine. Like, especially towards the end of January, pretty much every night that I wasn't working, I was only sleeping like 3 or 4 hours at a time. And so I'd wake up, couldn't fall back asleep, and I would stay up till it would just kind of depend. A lot of times I would fall back asleep at like noon to 2, sometimes it'd be like 4 or whatever, and I'd sleep for like 3 or 4 hours and then just keep repeating the same cycle over and over. And then there'd be nights where I'd try not to like take that nap or whatever, so I could, in my head I thought that I'd be able to sleep a lot better running on no sleep, but then that, the same cycle just continued. That didn't help me at all. So yeah, that's kind of when I started texting you about it. It's probably about end of January, beginning of February. And then February, yeah, that was just miserable. It was awful because I basically hadn't slept in 3 months. So what were your initial thoughts on that?
So I knew you were having trouble sleeping, and regardless of how old your kids get, you still worry, right? I knew you had made a lot of changes to get healthy, but it seemed like some of the stuff, if it were truly related to your diet, like per se, like you're restricting carbs. I don't know if you refer to it as keto, but whatever level of carbs you were on should have happened sooner. Naturally, I head to the internet to do research because not a lot of people know about this. I don't have access to a lot of people who do it. All I know is I'm Mom and I'm supposed to fix the problem. So my initial thoughts were, the first thing was, okay, I know some people, your grandmother included, tried melatonin, had some success. That's the first thought, because that's usually where a lot of people who have sleep disturbances go. Keeping in the back of my mind, you're in your 20s, your early 20s.
Right.
You are supposed to be able to stay up and, like even work your late shift and function the next day. Like, this is not normal for a young man your age. Okay, so there were a couple things. So first one was, okay, maybe melatonin's a thought, not knowing, how that's being produced in your body and what's really happening. I know your schedule was a little irregular, but still, I wasn't convinced. And then I thought, well, maybe, as you can see in the background, you're in a place where it's dark. Maybe you need some supplemental light, like you and I talked a little bit about, like people in Alaska need UV lights. It's dark. It seemed like winter lasted 8 months this year for some reason. I don't know why. I don't know if anyone else feels like that, but it just seemed like winter kind of drug on, even though it wasn't super cold, like you said, in December. So that was another one of my initial thoughts. And then we hit February and I was like, you clearly need something different in your schedule, something to look forward to, and just more that mental vacation, that's, I
Yes.
know you already did your podcast. It was probably one of my favorite to listen to
It
because
was my favorite. It was awesome.
I knew you needed a break. Like you've been, you went to college, worked those crazy hours, worked those weekends, and then you got to the point where you needed a break. And so I think that was also important. The other theory I started going down was, I don't know, you sent me something and it had to do with, I think it was when we were kind of researching our Neanderthals about sleep cycles didn't used to be based on an 8-hour, the people who hunted, the people who gathered their food, they woke up more frequently. Their bodies woke them up because they needed, whether they were hunting nocturnally or whether they were hunting during the day. And so I was like, I don't know. It seems like maybe for some reason your body's waking you up. Maybe you're not, the carbs you are consuming, maybe you're not distributing them. So then I started thinking, oh, well, maybe you should be eating more foods closer to bed, kind of like when you're feeding a little one,
Right.
as a parent, you try to feed them so that their tummy's full before they go to bed. Right. And
So
then,
something with that too that I'd kind of thought about, like the biphasic thing or whatever, is because food used to be a lot more scarce, especially for those people. So that, their bodies probably were like, that probably wasn't something that was natural. It's probably more of just an adaptation to the environment they were in. Like their body said, okay, if we're going to keep living, you need to get up and find food. It's kind of more
right.
so
And
why I think that was happening.
if you're going to kill a raccoon to eat it, you need to be awake when the raccoons are awake, right?
Right.
I mean,
So yeah, I don't
raccoons,
necessarily feel like our 8-hour sleep thing is necessarily like a bad thing now. I just think like there's evolutionary changes that kind of were responsible for that stuff, I guess.
Right. And sometimes our bodies go through phases where we adjust our sleep. When you yourself were it was an infant, I didn't sleep 8 hours because you woke up then too. So
Right.
Your body does make some adaptations as to what kind of sleep you need. And then finally, the last thought was, you and I talked about, okay, there's really not a lot of resources and not a lot of people who know about the dietary changes you've made. And we talked about, definitely. We talked about maybe looking at the alternative medicine doctor. And so, I don't know how much you want to get into that, but
yeah, I'd like to touch on that. Just let people know.
Like each of my things I mentioned. So there were 5 of them that I thought so you tried melatonin, right?
Yeah. 1 milligram and I forget the word for it, but it's slow release over the entire night. It's basically how it works.
Okay.
Like they make ones that are just instant to like help you fall asleep. Well, this was like in theory to kind of help me stay asleep. So 1 milligram of that. I'd try it just before going to bed. And then because I don't really like consuming products, basically, manufactured items, that I would just only take it if I woke up. So I tried it in kind of both scenarios. And there were some nights I would take one to fall asleep and then wake up in the middle of the night and try taking one more. Because that's the smallest dose you can get. Some of them are like 10 milligrams. That's the ones people take, and you hear them talking about being groggy and stuff like that. So yeah, I tried it in like a couple different combinations, and that didn't. It would help me go back to sleep a couple of nights, but then probably after about, I don't know, 4 or 5 days of using it, it didn't do anything for me. So
so then I feel like you have to take it away then before you try something else. Because if you keep taking that, then you don't know if something else is going to help. So you stop that, right?
So this is something I've kind of tried to explain to people too about, because I've always been very involved in science. Like I took pretty much the hardest science classes you could in high school. My college degrees science-based. Like I just have a really good understanding for how science works. And so this was like kind of on another topic, but I was talking to Dylan at work because he was like getting kind of strung out about like his weight or whatever, like fluctuating a lot. And I'm like, okay, how science works is you got to have control variables. So I'm like, you got to weigh yourself at the same exact time every day on the same duration of your fast. Don't consume any water or food before. Like there's a lot of variables that are going to mess with this. I'm like, depending, like do it on your most stable days. So probably the days you work because you're not training or doing as much of that stuff as you would be during the week. So yeah, that's something that's definitely important for people to understand if they're going to start experimenting, trying to improve their health and lifestyle, whatever's. If something like if one thing's not, well, there are certain scenarios where you want to do combinations of things, but yeah, if something's not really working, you might as well just eliminate it and keep your control variables as low as possible.
Right. I agree. And then we kind of, we talked a little bit about the carb distribution closer to bedtime. Did you do anything with that? Like eat a little later?
Well, so that wasn't carbs necessarily. I think at that time I was still pretty much like fully ketogenic still. Because I remember I came up there and it was like, I don't know, 8 or 9 o'clock. And it was about 9 o'clock, I think. And I'd usually been done eating around 7:30 or so. But I think you made burgers and I ended up sleeping really well that night. So you were like, okay, maybe like that's when you started like theorizing on that. Yeah, I tried that for, I don't know, probably. Okay, so before I made more changes, I probably tried that for like a week. The problem I found was it would kind of upset my stomach. And I think that's because I didn't give my body enough time to, start digesting it before I went and laid down. Well, your body, we're used to digesting food standing up like this. So laying down, I think that gave me a lot of upset stomachs, stuff like that. I remember one night I woke up in the middle of the night with a stomach ache. And in the morning, I would kind of just have some stomach pains and stuff. So yeah, I didn't really feel like that was the best option either.
Okay. And then let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the alternative medicine doctor. So I know I brought it up a couple of times and you finally decided, all right, I'm going to give it a try. I mean, at this point, I know you called me one very early morning and I remember sitting here in the living room and like, I could just hear kind of the I don't know, just the tone of your voice was concerning.
Yeah.
Yes. Like just like defeated at like, what do I do here? And so that's when I think you'd finally decided, all right, I'll give this a try. Tell us a little bit about it. What happened?
Yeah. So I went in there and the first visit, just kind of, letting the doctor know what's been going on, whatnot, and, all these changes and stuff I'd been making over the last year. Explained to him that I'd pretty much just finished the 75 hard program. And at that time I was kind of thinking like something with the exercise about how hard I just went into all this fitness stuff was messing with it. But I was hoping to get some blood work done and, kind of see what was going on under the hood. Hopefully that would lead to something that's, been causing these sleep disturbances. And at about that time too, I had started getting a lot of muscle cramps. Usually while I was sleeping. So I'd wake up in a ridiculous amount of pain and my calves would just be completely locked up and I would have to like fall out of bed and then kind of like stand up and just try and get them to go away, stretch it back out. So anyways, first visit went pretty well. He was very concerned about my work schedule. He said, in however many years that he had been a doctor, that he hadn't really ever seen a situation where that had worked out long term. Because I don't really know if I can explain this or not on the podcast, but work weekend nights, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, into Monday morning. So I'm on, and that's 12-hour shift. So 5:30 to 5:30, I'm working. And then I come home Monday and sleep till about 11. And that makes me, well rested enough to get through the day, but tired enough to where I can fall back asleep at like midnight the next night and sleep till like 8 or 9 the next day. Which I had done the first 3 months of starting all this with no issue. And then once, December and all that hit, that's when I started having the problems about getting back onto that schedule, basically. So yeah, first visit went pretty well. He said, he sent me to get blood work and, since I had been fasting and everything anyways, I just left straight from the office, got that done. That way it was in as soon as possible. So I think the next week or pretty much after that, I went and spent time up at the farm or whatever. And kind of the same situation. You would leave for work or whatever, and I would hear you leave for work, basically, like I was already up. So then I finally got the blood work back. I guess before I get into that, yeah, the alternative medicine portion of it, they're not real big on prescribing medications to treat issues like this, these lifestyle issues, which was kind of more up my alley. Because, like I'd already mentioned, I'm not real big into pharmaceuticals or just consuming anything that's not really evolutionary consistent for humans to be consuming. So yeah, basically next visit, got my blood work back, and he's kind of pointing out some, I guess you call them markers on my blood work about areas, I guess they're his areas of concern or whatever. So like, for example, one of them was my blood sugar. My blood sugar was, I think, 83 on the panel, and the low end of the range was 84. Well, if you know anything about a ketogenic diet, your blood sugar is consistent pretty much throughout the day. So you don't get any spikes from consuming sugar or carbohydrates, any of those things. So, there are situations where like a ketogenic will have like let's just say a blood sugar around 100, and they'll hold it around there consistently throughout the day. But my blood sugar is just on the lower end. So it's sat, at that low level pretty much all the time. One that's, pretty obvious, whatever, is my vitamin D. It was like, I think the range was 30 to 100 or something like that. I meant to pull up my blood work too, but I forgot. But I'm not going to get too much into that. So yeah, and it was at the bottom. I think it was 30. That's what my vitamin D was. And then kind of the big one, I guess, was like thyroid, and specifically TSH, which is thyroid stimulating hormone. So I think the range is like 0.5 to 4 or 0.5 to 3.5, somewhere around there. And I think mine was like 3.5, right? Somewhere around there.
On the higher end, yeah.
Yeah. So it wasn't ridiculous, but on the higher end. So what that marker basically means is that if you're on the low end of it, so like a 0.5, your thyroid is underactive. And if you're on the higher end, like I was, your thyroid is overworking. So there's a lot of stuff that can cause this, and it could, it can end up leading to autoimmune disorders like Hashimoto's is kind of what he was hinting at, what it might be an early stage of for me. Yeah. So anyways, I didn't really know how to take that. I mean, it was not really what I was expecting to hear. Yeah, but it wasn't like cancer or, any real disease, I guess. So I was kind of happy about that. But yeah, I kind of like hinted at some questions while I was in his office, and, he just wasn't really real open to answering anything I asked or taking on any of my ideas until I signed the piece of paper basically saying I was going to give them $7,000 before they even did anything.
Yeah.
So that's kind of when I keyed in onto, yes, they may not be pharmaceutical salesmen, but they are 100% supplement salesmen. And that's kind of what their whole operation was based about. Let me get you to sign on to all this. We're going to change your life or whatever. And we're going to sell you a fuck ton of supplements.
And we're going to threaten you with a predisposition to Hashimoto's that you've never heard of.
Exactly.
Right. That's the scary part. Again, another time when you bring me the paperwork and mom gets scared, like, oh, like I've never even really heard of that, or that, that isn't anything in our family history, like.
And what was the first thing I told you?
What? I don't remember.
I don't have an autoimmune disorder.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't have it. Yeah. And I guess, like you said, the whole point of going that route was hoping that somebody would say, hey, you've made these dietary changes. Let's take a look. I mean, the biggest problem was we probably should have like invested in some lab work when you got started. but not knowing where this was going to go, we didn't do that. Right. So like if somebody's listening to this and they're thinking about doing a ketogenic diet, I would strongly suggest you get someone to do your lab panel.
Yeah.
But
I haven't thought of the title for this podcast yet, but it's going to be something along the lines of I fucked up.
I fucked up.
Or learn from my mistakes. We'll put it a little cleaner, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But like, so at that point, remember we kind of talked about when you were here and I looked at the lab work and I was like my mind's going, okay, well, $6,000, you know, like 7,000, whatever it was, like that's realistic, but is it necessary? And then like, did he take us, you know, like how bad did your labs used to be? And is this now an improvement of something that was horrible because of, you know, you were 150% bigger than you are now, you know, like all these changes. And so it was really hard to go, okay, are we actually at a point where we've taken labs on an improvement, or is this something that's getting worse? And so like, at this point, I don't even know, you know, like part of me is like, well, maybe that should be repeated. And the other part of me is like, I don't think they gave me enough information other than for both of us to keep digging deeper, I think.
Okay.
I feel like, yeah.
So
and
do you want to?
Well, yeah, let's talk a little bit like, so I kind of put these out of order.
Okay.
Well, first,
give me just a second to pull them up. Is that what you're wanting? Is the notes?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
Let's look at the notes and then I don't know if there's a way you can like tag these. Maybe we could just put this into your notes. But so like, we didn't really talk about the UV light because we didn't really do it. Right. We didn't go that route.
I did some research, but the thing that confused me was like the ones they sell is like red lights. They're just regular ass light bulbs that are red tinted. Yeah. They're not actually UV. It was really hard to find a UV one.
I threw it up there because it was one of those like, oh, these are my thoughts, right?
Yeah.
But so what this did for me anyway was got me like thinking about, okay, so something's going on that's causing your body to wake up. You saw a little bit of improvement for melatonin, but what's going on? And so I started learning about some of like body chemistry, and I'm just scratching the surface here. Your body is such a complicated, but perfect system that can really control itself in a lot of ways that I don't even think we even have a tiny understanding of really what's happening. But there were a couple hormones and a couple amino acids that really like caught my attention based on what I knew you were consuming now. And so the first one I listed here under number 1, I'm going to say it. I don't know if I'm going to butcher it. So that's why I really wanted it in notes, but I think it's tryptophan.
Okay.
And it's found in a lot of carbohydrate foods, a lot of dairy foods, and a lot of eggs. There's some other foods. There is some in red meats, but like these are the things that you had kind of eliminated from your diet, because initially before you were having sleep trouble, and I asked you, but I don't remember exactly when you cut out eggs and then you'd kind of stopped putting cheese on things, and like you had at least decreased the dairy.
Yeah. Because so for me, the concerning part about dairy was it's super easy to overconsume.
Sure.
So like all the cheese and stuff, I was having, I'll pull this up in a little bit later so I can like hint on the stuff I've changed. But yeah, I was eating like 4 eggs a day and then like about 2 cups of cheese.
Yeah. And the other thing about cheese is there are some, like, you don't know how it's always processed. And so you really have to be careful reading the packages. That there could be hidden sugars, hidden, preservatives, that kind of stuff too. So anyway, those things had kind of gone. The tryptophan foods had been gone from your diet. And this is an important amino acid that our brain needs to convert to serotonin.
Yeah.
And so serotonin is our happiness hormone, like everybody's favorite hormone. How do we get it? It's our feel-good hormone, right? The one that makes us happy, that we release when we exercise, when we do good things. And that hormone is then needed to produce melatonin naturally. Okay. So I was like, oh, so this has taken a drop and he's waking up because his body isn't producing its own melatonin. Okay. And then the second one was tyrosine, which is found in chicken and meats. And at this point, I'm sure there's some other foods. I don't have an all-encompassing list here, but this particular amino acid aids in the production of epinephrine and norepinephrine, which are our like alerting hormones, the ones that give us energy and make us go. If you've ever watched a doctor show on TV, they're like, push epi. That's the one that gets you moving. Okay.
Yeah.
So you have this one hormone is down that helps you sleep, and one hormone that's up that helps you go, putting your body
Yes.
into full alert. And so I'm going to guess, and I don't know if I've ever asked you this, but when you woke up, you were awake.
Oh yeah, wide awake.
Yeah, like
it was
wide
no
awake
like
and-
groggy morning, like, oh man, I got to get up. It was like wide
Yes.
open eyes, like, holy shit.
Here we go. Like, put your feet on the floor. It's time to roll. And so I do think, like, at least on the brain level, I believe these are secreted by the pineal gland, but I'm not.
Pineal
I'm
gland,
not-
yes. It's
Yes.
I think it's the single most responsible part of your brain for hormone production.
Yes. So we're dealing with levels of things that like even lab work isn't going to show. Okay. Like you can't just go in and check your serotonin levels.
Yeah, how your
You
brain's
can't
working.
and you can't take a serotonin supplement. Like it's just, you have to find natural ways to produce these hormones. Then once I reread your lab work, I listened to some other, you sent me a couple doctor, people who had a little more understanding of lab work. The emphasis on that thyroid being overactive makes perfect sense in that your blood sugar is super low. And so, which that typically happens even in diabetics. In the normal population, your blood sugar drops at night, or it's supposed to. And then we need extra cortisol to increase your blood sugar. And throughout the night, your cortisol level is low, and it gradually increases as you start to wake.
Yep.
And so, yeah,
That's basically what wakes you up, right?
That's what wakes you up.
Yeah.
So we have no melatonin to sleep. We have epinephrine and norepinephrine firing in our body. And now this cortisol is trying to help control our blood sugar. And now we're really awake.
Yes.
But we also feel like crap, and we have no feel good hormone in us. So what
I will say
system.
So 2 points. So another thing I learned from Andrew Huberman too on his podcast was that like cortisone and testosterone are always in this like balancing act. Basically, they're always fighting each other, and I feel like like no energy or like I just feel like that's something I was like kind of talking to Dylan about or whatever. I'm like, dude, like I don't really know anything about testosterone or anything. I had mentioned like I wonder why so many people are like getting on TRT replacement therapy, or like why we have these. I mean, we've talked about it too before. Like people have like these all-time lows or whatever, and so I kind of have like this hierarchy of things and like health things in my life, and it's basically sleep number 1, water number 2, nutrition number 3, exercise number 4, and then there's like some minor things below that. And like cumulatively, like as a society, we get really shitty sleep from all kinds of environmental factors. Our estrogen producing scents that we have in our house or on our mattress, all the screen time, phone time, all these other distractions that we have that are really disrupting our sleep. And then the other point I want to make was I'll mention once we get into like the solution to all this, basically like who's responsible for giving me this information. But I heard on a podcast today with 2 people I listen to quite often, that you'll hear in the ketogenic community like about talking about all the mental clarity and how much energy you feel like you have or whatever, because you don't get those like the insulin dumps or whatever from from consuming carbohydrates that might make you like tired after you sleep or after you eat and stuff like that. So he was theorizing that for humans, basically, our goal, the big picture, is for quick energy, find carbs, like evolutionary. Like that's the number one thing we've been focused on, is finding quick, bioavailable, easy to digest energy. So if fine carbs is the big picture, then the state of ketosis, why we have that, is basically for survival when we can't find carbs. So after hearing that, and after all going through all this, one of the things that I kind of see the ketogenic state for now is like it's a tool basically, and not so much like a lifestyle. Because the other thing he mentioned was like it's super easy to get religious about food, and you'll definitely see this. I mean, obviously, like probably the most obvious one is like the vegan community, because they're so hard pressing and hardcore, and a lot of it's like some of that woke bullshit and whatnot. Yeah, you'll see it with keto, carnivore, paleo. I mean, whatever your diet is, there's these people that are like super like, if you don't do this, you're not one of us. So yeah, that definitely like changed my perspective on looking into all of this. Because yeah, I kind of, I wasn't like super hardcore, but from what I had learned and the effects I had seen on my own body, I kind of felt like this was how we were designed, basically, was to run off fat sources, when really it's like, what, you and I talked about ancestral living on our last podcast. And if you need energy or whatever, what's the quickest source to get it? And that's basically naturally occurring carbohydrates.
Right.
So yeah, that was just some interesting stuff that I had kind of just recently bumped into and I jotted down.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So basically, I guess, should I get into like what I found?
Yeah. What happened?
Okay. So yeah, I started watching, YouTube videos. I love YouTube. That's the only form of television I watch, basically, is YouTube. And I found this channel called Carnivore MD, and the guy's name is Paul Saladino. And about, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, he wrote a book on the carnivore diet. And he saw, he tried several different diets, whatever. He actually does have or did have an autoimmune issue, something with his skin. You might be able to help me with the name. I know I've seen TV commercials for it.
Psoriasis?
Psoriasis, yes, that's what he
Yeah. Didn't he also have something with his hair too? A hair condition?
Possibly. I don't really remember
think
that.
so. I thought I remembered hearing that too. But anyway, okay.
Yeah, so I found him. So yeah, he was real big on the carnivore diet, so much so that he wrote a book over it. He started basically spreading the message of the carnivore diet. It cleared up his psoriasis. But before he got on the carnivore diet, he was paleo. Like most of the time, he was in college, I believe, and then after he became a doctor, he was like a hardcore raw vegan. But yeah, he started seeing a lot of negative health issues from that. I guess I think he found the Joe Rogan podcast with Jordan Peterson on it, and that's what caused him to dive deep into the whole carnivore diet thing, because Jordan Peterson also had he had an autoimmune issue that the carnivore diet cleared up. His depression went away from it. He just saw like a lot of these things that are really hard to take care of in our society just vanish just by changing what he ate. So yeah, he did that for about a year, and then he started having heart palpitations, some muscle cramps, and his sleep was super erratic. He looked at his blood work, whatever, and his thyroid was actually on the opposite end of the spectrum as mine. I think his was around 0.5. So his thyroid was underactive, which I did do a little bit of research on that. And like your thyroid will become or it can become overactive and then underactive, because basically it's worked itself to where it can't work anymore.
He's
so
a little older than you.
He's
Yeah.
a little
So
older, and he did
Yeah.
I mean, he was in about a year, whereas I was in about 3 months when I started having the issues. So his potentially could have been where mine was, and then on the opposite end of the scale. Hard to
Yeah.
say, but anyways, that made me start thinking. It was about, I don't know, 10 o'clock at night when I'm watching this video, and it scared the shit out of me. I think it scared the shit out of me because I finally kind of figured it out, and realized, like, holy crap, I'm kind of killing myself. I mean, once your thyroid doesn't work anymore, you're basically dependent on a medication, in theory, if you can't change it naturally. So didn't really want to be in that situation. So that night, I was waiting until the end of the video, and then I was gonna go to Walmart and get some berries, because in my mind, berries would be the most evolutionary consistent source of carbohydrate for someone of my, how do I put this? I guess a white guy, big white guy in the wilderness. I'm not going to find bananas or oranges or any real like citrus or tropical type fruit where I'm ancestrally, consistent with being from. But I've watched a lot of hunting videos and stuff like that. And they're always talking about how good black bears taste when they're munching on blueberries, like in Alaska and Canada. So I was like, that'd probably be a good one to start with. I've found a bunch of blackberries in Missouri. I don't even remember how many I had last year, but I had several giant bags of blackberries. So I knew that would probably, make a lot of sense. And then I kind of, I started with those two, but then I was kind of like theorizing on some more berries. So I ended up trying strawberries and raspberries too, just because I figured they were pretty similar as far as digesting and metabolizing as those other berries would be. Also, these berries are lower in sugar than most things like a banana or an orange or an apple. So I thought that might be something better to focus on, because I didn't really understand. I hadn't had any sugar for 6 months at this point, so I was kind of skeptical of like overloading on it. So I was going to start small with that stuff. Those berries have like a lot of fiber and stuff like that. But they're really rich in stuff like, vitamin C, which there's a lot of controversy over vitamin C, whereas there's a couple studies coming out now that if you, don't consume carbohydrates, it doesn't really seem like you need vitamin C. I don't know, but it's something I had zero of before consuming these berries. So have, more than enough of that now. A lot of other, micronutrients that I wasn't getting. So yeah, I started eating berries for about a week, and I was just kind of eating them like intermittently. And I wasn't, I slept good a couple of nights, but I wasn't really seeing like big changes. So, and I was probably only consuming like 1 or 2 cups of berries a day at that point, which is, kind of like a normal serving, but I'm a big guy. With a fast metabolism, and I'm very active and stuff like that, so they probably weren't doing a whole lot for me. So then I tried a banana again, because I thought maybe I just need something that's a lot more a lot more sugars, a lot more, it's a lot bigger than like a cup of berries. So I had 2 bananas one day, and I was the sickest I've ever been. Without actually getting sick, like the stomach pains were absolutely terrible. So yeah, that was, I'd talked about that on the previous podcast where I had tried a banana again, just wanting to try fruit to see what effects that would give me. But yeah, bananas and me do not jive. So as I dug more and more into Paul Saladino's, research and findings and all that, he goes into a lot of detail about understanding plant toxicity. And I think this is something that's very important, because obviously there's, someone might only eat, beef or pork or chicken, like your common meats, very, very low number of variables there. They're, you don't have a lot of options really. On a normal diet, I guess. there are some people that eat any and every meat. I'm not that guy. I kill raccoons and bobcats and squirrels, and I don't really always eat those. So yeah, but there's a lot of different plants. And so this is kind of a very complex issue, but the most highly defended parts of the plants are the roots, stems, and seeds. That's the ones that, you'll see where they grow thorns and spikes and all these other, defense mechanisms basically. And I know I've talked about this before, talking about like on our game plot episode, just diving into all the plants and stuff we were talking about with Dad, that defense chemicals are pretty much the number one way a plant protects itself, whether that's becoming more weed resistant or trying to not get eaten by animals, or overtaken by other plants. I mean, this is how plants have evolved, to basically produce chemicals so that they're not messed with. So yeah, he has basically like a scale for plant toxicity. And so the best, most nutritious and easily metabolized and digested for humans starts with fruit. So yeah, I think he kind of eats more of the like tropical citrusy stuff. So he eat, bananas, and pineapples, and stuff like that. And he does really well on that. But I'm kind of too scared from what happened with banana to really try anything else. So I've just been sticking with berries. But yeah, things, I don't really consume any vegetables. He's super anti-vegetable. I don't really know enough to cast an opinion on that. I definitely think wheat, corn, and soy are absolute no-goes. You couldn't pay me $1 million to put either of those in my body now, just because I know what all goes into producing them. Spraying Monsanto all over them and modifying the shit out of them so that they're able to grow each year. And they're just not something that's evolutionary consistent for humans to consume. We've only really started consuming that stuff heavily in the last 200 years. So yeah, anyways, I mean, that's advice I would give to someone, is just get a good grasp for plant toxicity. I would stay away from, those three things. If you wanted to try like, I don't know, tomatoes or, some greens and stuff like that, he's super anti on it. I don't really know that it's going to do too much damage for you. It's a lot better than eating McDonald's. I know that much. So I wouldn't really fear that. But for me, it's about being like the healthiest possible. And I'm not perfect on it. I mean, he's super anti-seeds and seed oils. I still put pepper on my burgers. I drink a cup of coffee first thing every day. Like, I'm not perfect on it, but something he says a lot too that I also agree with is that like any conscious change in your diet is like a good thing. Like if you're being mindful about what you're consuming, you're on the right track. Even if you don't have the best plan, or you're not necessarily consuming like the most optimal things, at least you're not consuming garbage basically, or as much garbage as you would be just mindlessly stuffing stuff in your pothole. So yeah, anyways, the first week I didn't really see that many effects. Whatever, tried the banana, got sick, and I was like, okay, I really need to go heavy on these berries. So I got it written down somewhere how many berries I was consuming. So yeah, I'll eat about 9 ounces of blueberries, 12 ounces of raspberries. These aren't like exact numbers because some days I'll mix up which berries I eat. Like I won't eat all 4, and some days I'll just eat 2 or 3, or sometimes I'll have a little bit of each one. About 6 ounces of blackberries, and that sounds like a lot of fruit, but basically, the sugar and all of this in fruit is what I've learned, like not something to fear, which is something I feel like it's kind of been another sold lie, like how the grain industry was. that like fruit is dangerous, and clearly it is not. I've been doing this for probably about a month now, and my sleep is tremendously improved. I have no issues anymore. I'm basically back to, I wouldn't even say I'm back to normal. I'd say I'm better than I was before I even started doing any of this. A lot more energy. I do get like a little bit tired sometimes after I eat now, probably from that insulin spike. But it's not anything I'm real concerned about. I don't have the muscle cramps anymore. I talked about too previously that I have had heart palpitations over, I don't know, a couple times the last year. Maybe like there's an electrolyte issue or something. I don't really know. But I haven't had any of those since doing this. So I just kind of feel, I'd like to get your opinion on this, that I like overused ketosis.
Yes, I would
Yeah.
say so. It's not meant for long-term, like you said, it's a natural body mechanism that even some people go into ketosis at night when they sleep. Like it does, people's bodies move in and out of it, but it's not a natural state to be burning fats for fuels at all times. Something I know, I don't know if you talked about this, Annie, but Dr. Saladino, am I saying it correctly?
Saladino.
He, a part of my research, I looked into a little bit of his stuff on blood sugar, and he actually had a company do a continuous glucose monitor on him. Yep. To where he wore it, I forget how many days in a row it was, but what he was looking for was to see what happened to his blood sugar when he consumed berries and honey. And he would have, I don't remember, I think it was around 100 was his baseline, maybe 120.
I think it was 80 something actually.
But he would have these natural spikes and then they would come right back down. Whereas like somebody who has blood sugar issues, they don't get that immediate peak and fall. And
and they'll get, like, they won't just have a fall, it'll go back up and back down, like even over, right. And then without consuming extra.
Continually climb. Whereas he continued, he was kind of doing a little research project on himself, knowing that he could even check his own labs. Obviously being a doctor makes it a little easier, but he was seeing those natural peaks and then the return to normal. The only other thing is he is very active, right? He's a very physically active guy. But I think when you get the body chemistry right and you have the correct hormones, you have the energy and you have the desire to go out and be active.
Yes.
But yes, I do think you keyed into a very important thing, that blood sugar has been given a bad rap, that immediately everything raises your blood sugar, when we don't really look at our body's natural ability to stabilize our own blood sugar again. So
right, that's what he's really big on, is like, it's not about the spikes, like it's about the baseline. So if it drops right back down that quick, it's not a problem.
Right. And he didn't care how high the spike went.
No, his were like 150 sometimes.
He was looking for the width of the peak, which is really interesting stuff that, if anybody's listening to this, I would encourage him to kind of look it up and see, just kind of take a second look at it and see. I'm not saying, like a Snickers bar is the better way to go. These were natural berries, natural sugars with some complexity to them that I think is important, that maybe we didn't say either, that, reintroducing carbs, again, you did it in a very controlled manner. And you were very careful about your selection of what carbs you did reintroduce to your body. I still think that's key. As well as, like that banana may just have some acids or, something in there that's just not working. We've talked about brain chemicals. We've talked about liver function. We've talked about the pancreas function and blood sugar. We haven't even talked about the digestive tract. Like really, that's a whole nother complex mechanism that,
that we really don't even fully understand yet. That's something we might want to get just a little bit further into, is like the function of the liver, as far as because I don't really think we touched on what it's doing for me, to where how I'm seeing these benefits. And I think it kind of starts at the liver. So I prefer if you explain that, because I'll probably butcher the hell out of it.
well, and I might too, but basically it has to do with your body, your liver's ability to signal your body to create glucagon, which then helps control your overall insulin and blood sugar. And so again, another very like complex feedback loop based on what you've consumed. Everybody used to kind of give the liver a bad rap and say it was like the oil filter of your body, when really it plays an important role in insulin producing hormones. I don't know. I don't have a whole lot more to say on that, but just that knowing the liver is also working hard to help keep your blood sugar at a normal
Yes.
rate.
So yeah, I feel like, it kind of starts, and this is just my mediocre understanding of it, but starts at the liver, whatever. The liver is not producing or absorbing the nutrients it needs in order to, that ends up down the chain, making your pituitary gland work twice as hard to stimulate the thyroid in order to produce the necessary hormones for you to sleep and, all these problem areas that I was having. So kind of
Sure.
liver, pituitary gland, thyroid is kind of how I saw it.
Yeah, like really, it has to be broken down in the liver and the digestive tract first. That's what I mean. That's probably where we really should have started when I started looking at sleep hormones and, happiness hormones versus metabolically happening.
Yeah, it was so hard for me to really see the metabolic flaw, because like everything else was fine. Like I was losing weight still, like my workouts were great, like I didn't feel like crap like I did before when I was ridiculously overweight. Like it was just like the sleep, but I kept telling you that it's just the sleep, like that's the main problem here. So it's really hard for me to like turn on what had gotten me to where I was. Yeah, that just goes back to not getting religious about food, though. I feel like that was the big issue. And I wasn't super bad, but yeah, it's just, you got to be like, in 3 more months, I could have another problem arise where I might have to adjust something too. Like I'm not dead set on this stuff. That's why I said in one of my podcasts, like, do your research and find out what works for you, because there's, we're all a complex mix of certain genes. And, you'd kind of said, or we'd kind of said like ketosis being a tool, and maybe that's something you're not supposed to be in all the time, which you're probably not, but certain people's genes, may allow them to be in that state all the time without having the issues I'm having. So it's, it's super complex stuff that we really know very little about. I honestly feel like the majority of the research and beneficial information has come in the last 10 years about this stuff. Which, I mean, I guess it's kind of promising for the direction we're heading, especially because 40% of, the nation's overweight or obese right now. So
maybe we'll get to the point where we'll stop looking for the convenient drive-through, eat it out of a sack, grab it, the fruit snacks, all this refined sugar and convenience of, I don't know.
Another thing I kind of found too, like, because how like heart palpitations are a lot of times like can be caused by an electrolyte imbalance. There's this study that I think it was one of the more recent podcasts Paul Saladino put out. Insulin correlates like directly with the amount of electrolytes that are absorbed by the body. So you'll see all the time people in the ketogenic community, marketing electrolyte supplements and all this crap so you have more electrolytes in your system. But on a high fat, high protein diet, there's less electrolytes that you actually hold on to. So you might be taking in all this, supplemental electrolyte sources and whatnot, but they're not actually doing anything for you.
They're just passing.
Yeah. So this is something else I think people should really focus on too. Like you'll see all these crazy, diet guys and fitness guys and stuff on Instagram, they're eating like raw organs and raw eggs, stuff like this. There's a lot of studies to show that like cooking meat is basically part of our evolution because it makes it more bioavailable. Like, yes, there may be more nutrients and stuff like that in a raw piece of meat, but the part that your body is actually utilizing is significantly more when you cook it. So you got to understand, you might be taking in this stuff, but it's not actually doing anything for you. And that's one big point that I wrote at the top here that I want to make sure I got to, is that most supplements are bullshit. Paul Saladino makes these shirts all the time, or he does all these videos, and it'd be like bullshit or not. So he's got ones like kale is bullshit, coffee is bullshit, supplements are bullshit. Humans are not designed to take supplements. Now, if you're an athlete or whatever, and you're looking for most top tier premier performance or whatever, maybe supplements are something you want to utilize. But another thing we don't really realize is that athletes are not always the healthiest specimen in the world. They might look incredible, but bodybuilders die at 25 and 30 years old. Football players and stuff, their brain doesn't really function sometimes after they've been hit.
Right.
We got to quit looking at some of these people as the premier for health, and more so just, they're good at what they do. Yeah,
for sure.
Supplements are bullshit. That's going to hurt a lot of people's feelings, but I kind of feel like it's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Especially from, realizing like the doctor and stuff I went to, how big they were on pushing all of that.
Yeah. You've got a long way to go to eat $6,000 worth of berries and honey, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd calculated it. I think, that's another point I want to get into, and I almost forgot to make the note of it, is how kind of expensive my diet is now. Meat is through the roof right now. We have all this inflation and stuff like that, so it's making it even more ridiculous. So it's just meat, berries, and honey. I guess I kind of forgot to mention that I'm consuming honey now too, but organic, raw, unfiltered honey, which is, top tier stuff. As far as meat, I don't really do the whole grass-fed, grass-finished thing. There's also some research on that backing that like beef, because of the way they digest food, it's not really as essential for as it would be for like pork or chicken, which I'm going to get into like exactly the amounts of everything I consume here in a second. But yeah, so to kind of combat that cost, I know I've talked about before, like building a really good team around you whenever you're taking on big endeavors like these lifestyle changes or, starting a podcast, whatever. Do you want to talk about kind of your little operation you have going on at the farm now?
Oh, you mean the bee operation or the
bees and the berries and all that?
Well, since none of it has a name yet, but since we don't, have an entire building project going on this summer, we've gone a little crazy with planting. Like we like to watch things grow and things turn green. And I think it's, again, because, we need spring. But yes, we've taken some steps to plant multiple bushes of berries, blueberries, raspberries, strawberries, I believe is what we have. I don't know exactly. I've lost count of how many are planted now. We've planted multiple fruit trees, and your dad is now becoming a bee farmer. I don't know, is that the word beekeeper?
Beekeeper, I believe.
Beekeeper, yes. So his new pets should be here next week, I think.
10,000 bees, right? And a queen.
10,000 bees, yes. Or a swarm, I think is.
Swarm. Okay.
I'm still learning. A swarm, yes.
Me
It has
too.
a queen and all her workers. And he's been working hard to build them their new homes. And then we're also planting lavender. I don't know if that should be on there as well, but
No,
yes.
That's
so
estrogen inhibiting and all of that. We're not.
Yeah, well,
we don't
but
support that.
We don't support that, right? Yes, but we are definitely the lavenders for the bees too. And I did I say strawberries? Yeah, I mentioned strawberries too.
You forgot blackberries though. There were a couple blackberry bushes, and then we have a lot of naturally occurring blackberries
Yes.
as well. So
And we've made sure to keep those separate. So
yeah. So yeah, all the berries I consume and honey. Only thing
Right.
missing is the beef and pork, I guess. There's at least venison.
venison is in the yard almost every night this week. So yes, when the
Oh, that's
season rolls
awesome.
around again, you can fill the freezers. But yeah, so we're hoping to, just produce some of what we consume more here versus giving that control to the supermarket. So we'll see.
And then you know exactly how it's being raised and all of that
Right.
and whatnot. Which couple, I guess I forgot to mention the cost of it or whatever. I think when I was in Florida, I figured, which theirs might have been a little more expensive. I was spending like $12 a day on fruit. So what was that? Yeah, that's $4,380. Plus, my honey lasts. The jar of it's like $15 and it lasts about a month. So what is that?
50 cents a day.
So another $180 on that. So like $4,500 is the total yearly cost of adding this stuff into my diet, which is, still quite a bit less than the $7,000 the doctor wanted, plus all the gas I have to spend driving all the way there. And I don't know if there's supplements and all that bullshit were included in the cost. And I don't remember, but yeah. So still a hell of a lot cheaper.
Right. And I guarantee most medical conditions cannot be managed for $4,500 a year. So,
well, that's the thing too. Yeah. That was a start. Like, who knows how long it would have gone on. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, I give medical professionals like a lot of crap on this podcast a lot of the time, I feel like, but also there's guys doing good work like Paul Saladino and,
yeah, and I think
colleagues.
it's important to look for the people who are willing to kind of balk what everybody else says. I think that's the thing about
and not be afraid to say they were wrong. Like he was strict carnivore and he's like, hey, this isn't right. Like I'm having a lot of issues.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that you won't ever need a medical doctor in your lifetime, but you definitely want to make sure you ask the right questions as to like their philosophies and their what their treatment protocols are and what they understand. Like,
yeah.
I think
you
if
can't be an expert in everything.
No, and I think if you'd have gone to most mainstream, primary care physicians, they would have given you some kind of medication they would have wanted you to try a sleep aid, it would have been all pharmaceutical. That's what would have happened. And then, as well as a doctor saying, I want you to spend $6,000. Oh, and by the way, you need to quit your job because that's really the problem here.
Yeah.
All things are pointing back to it. You need to quit your job, but you need to pay me $6,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was the other thing I guess I didn't really touch on. He said the job like needed to go basically because there was he'd never seen it work. But yeah.
Right.
How am I going to quit my job and pay you $7,000?
Right. So
go ahead.
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
So just one more note or whatever. I think it's the only other one I had was like another thing. So like Paul Saladino, his testosterone like increased like 300 points or something like that too when he added the fruit back in. And so he felt like another interesting marker to look at, which a lot of people don't, is free testosterone to cortisol ratio, because so on keto, it's pretty much been shown that testosterone drops. Like Sean Baker is another, he might have been one of the first actually for the carnivore diet, which is he's another doctor. His is around like 200 and the normal range is like 400 to 1200. His is like super low, but I don't know, he's kind of, I feel like his intentions are good, but he's kind of like religious about it. So he'll try and like explain that and whatnot. But yeah, one other thing, like if you're diabetic, you may see, as far as like ketosis, you may see like improvements in the short term or whatever. But like what we're talking about here is basically like the long-term effects of keto. Like we said, like this is we're mostly talking in metabolically healthy individuals, whatever, not people that already have prior disease.
Yeah.
So that kind of leads into one of the questions I wrote down, which is, do you think carbohydrates are essential? Because, there's a lot of debate on whether or not, obviously proteins and fats have specific roles in the body. And there's several people that have survived for, their whole life on a ketogenic or carnivore-like diet. So yeah, I was just want to get your input on if you felt like they were essential.
Well, that was a question for me. I didn't know if that was like an audience question.
No, that's for you.
Essential for, I'm going to qualify it for saying they are essential for optimal health. I think you could survive, but as we talked about in the very beginning of this, the quality of your life living on just proteins, keto, whatever we want to call it, was not sustainable for typical function. So could you live like that? Probably. But the quality of your life was really taking a toll. Like and the small introduction of some complex carbs has made, tremendous gains right now. Yeah. So I do think essential for optimal health. Sure.
Here's one thing I have wondered about too. If, I'm kind of on the theory now that like the fine, quick, easy energy thing that Paul Saladino had mentioned, like fine carbs is kind of like how we're wired or whatever. But I've also wondered at the same time, if you had never introduced carbohydrates into your diet, would you still be wired like that? Because here's the other thing I've considered too, is that so like milk is also considered like a superfood because it has like a perfect balance of protein, fat, and carbs. And that's something we all come into this world consuming.
But are you talking like unpasteurized, unhomogenized milk, like straight from, say, a mother? Or are you talking about?
Yeah, that's what I'm referencing. Like we pretty much all come into this world on carbs. So I guess it'd kind of be hard to like make that assumption to never having carbs, because that's pretty much important.
Nearly impossible.
Yeah, nearly important or nearly impossible.
Like, my mom consumed carbs, so I consumed carbs. So then you can say, like to be able to break that would be nearly impossible. So
this is a very complex issue.
Yeah. It's like,
one thing, the last thing I had written down, I don't know if you have anything else, but I wanted to share like what my diet looked like.
No, go for it.
So I made some comparison charts, or I took it from my app, but made some collages. So on the left is keto, and on the right is now. So I guess what he calls the diet now is like an animal-based diet. So I'm still consuming super high fat animal products. And technically the medical definition for low carb is anything under 40% of your daily intake. Yeah. I don't know how the hell you consume 40% carbs unless you're eating like pasta all the time.
Bread, cereals, like really.
I guess that's a lot. Like I consume, if people didn't understand the numbers I threw out, that's like 3 full-size boxes of fruit a day. Like that's a lot.
Yeah, but I think when you don't fully understand, if you don't use this and actually look, by the way, this is what's the app? It's a great app. We should
MyFitnessPal.
MyFitnessPal, super free, got almost every food in there. Like I think it's a fantastic tool, and it really it opened my eyes to how horrible some foods I thought were okay.
That's the best way to use it, because what I will say is you can really develop an unhealthy relationship with food if you're religious about tracking everything you eat every single day. This is a great tool for learning about macronutrients and what's in what and how it affects you, basically. But like I want to make that point real quick that I don't track my food every day. I don't track it ever, actually. I had to download the app so I could put these numbers in. I used it in the beginning to learn and as a tool. And then I realized, after listening to some podcasts and, every now and then I didn't always treat my body like probably how I should have. Because I had some goals and I was trying to lose weight, stuff like that. So I probably wasn't, doing everything 100% the healthy way. So I just deleted the app.
And I think we can fall into a guilt trap if we do have a day. That's the important thing to recognize here is if it's somebody's birthday and you're having a piece of your child's birthday cake, tomorrow's a new day, that'll go away.
Yeah,
there's a need to document that you wanted a piece of birthday cake, but at the same time to look at I used it to look at what I ate in a day, especially during the week when I worked, when I'm away from what I consider quality food. So it was anything I packed or if I stopped someplace and I was like, oh, wow. Really, I had no idea how many carbs I was consuming before lunchtime. And I'm
because that's the thing too. Yes, while carbohydrates are not something to fear, there are a lot of bad carbohydrates. It's really hard to find bad fats and bad proteins, but carbohydrates, you can really find a lot of bad ones. So yeah, just making sure that what you're consuming is a nutritional carbohydrate and not crap.
Yes.
But what I will say too, like a piece of birthday cake or whatever, I would never probably ever eat a piece of birthday cake again. But that's not to say someone shouldn't. I think, I do not ever want to be as unhealthy as I was before. And so something like that would just, I don't see any benefit for it for me. But for some people, their emotional relationship with food, I don't really see a problem with that. If you're, pretty straight and healthy most of the time, if you want to splurge on something like that, I don't think that's an issue at all. I kind of gave Stacy crap about it one day, and I think she got kind of mad about it because it was the same situation. She went to a party where everyone had cake, and she's like, "I really want a piece of cake," and I was like, "Weak." That's all I said.
You're worse than the MyFitnessPal.
Yeah, yeah. It'll just throw up fucking numbers if you don't understand them. I guess it's really not that mean, but yeah. So
I think it's more about shaping your lifestyle and,
a healthy lifestyle, healthy relationship with food. That's really the goal.
And understanding the purpose of food versus, what upbringing you had and what food meant. There's some cultures that food is all about a celebration and a gorgement to the point that you can't move. And then there's, the extremes of people who would get hung up on this. Oh my gosh, my macros are all out of balance. And I think part of it is just recognizing,
that's something I will say too. This is just even when I was in keto, these are just ballpark numbers that I would consistently run into. This is not every day. I 100% eat off of how I feel. So on the one on the right, I just did it for today. I added in a cup of blueberries or a half cup of blueberries on there that I might eat after dinner because I know that the honey is the honey really stimulates hunger for me, which is kind of good for consuming as much protein as I'm trying to get, just for a healthy muscle building recovery, all that, because I'm still lifting weights pretty much every day during the week. But yeah, they're not exact. If I'm not as hungry, I probably won't eat those blueberries later. Or, if I can't get, there's 4. I'll pull up I guess I kind of talk about it real quick because I wrote it all down, but it's not on here. So I'll just read this off for anyone that's listening. So keto was 69% fat, 234 grams. 225 grams of protein, which is 30%, and then 1% carbohydrates at 7 grams. So eating like that was about 3,000 calories. So I was having 2 cups of coffee at that time. So it was about a cup of creamer, sugar-free creamer. 4 pieces of sausage, 10 pieces of bacon, 4 eggs, 2 cups of mozzarella cheese, That would be one meal, and then 8 ounces of chicken and 120 grams of queso, which is like, I don't know, about a half a cup or something like that. And it's not really measured. So now I'm at 55% fat for 209 grams, 22% protein at 186 grams, and 23% carbohydrates at 201 grams. That is 1 cup of coffee, so about a half cup of creamer, blueberries at 9 ounces, raspberries at 12 ounces, 10 pieces of bacon, 6 pieces of sausage, 2 tablespoons of honey. That's the first meal. And then my last meal is 4 85 15 burgers. So 15, right? 15% fat is what that would mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
85-15. Yeah.
Yeah. And then 4 tablespoons of honey. I pretty much use a tablespoon of honey on each one. And I don't know if I said the blackberries, 6 ounces of blackberries or not. I don't know if I said that in the first one or not. But yeah, that's basically what that is. And that's about 3,400 calories. So yeah, I'll pull up also one thing I want you to see if you have any input on it. Is like the nutrient breakdown of that. Did it come up?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's basically just the ones that I already read off. The one thing that interests me now is that I basically eat the same amount of meat. My cholesterol is way lower. Because, people make a big deal about cholesterol all the time.
And look at your sodium count.
Yeah. Like the numbers to the right of, like, my numbers on the left, the one on the right is like MyFitnessPal's, like, targets or whatever.
Yeah.
I never went off any of that, but I would say, though, just from like what I know, like that sodium level would be a lot healthier. That
Right.
cholesterol number would be, quote unquote, a lot healthier.
Yeah.
And then I'll pull up, there's a couple more.
What's the difference in your fats? Yeah, your fats are about the same too.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like fat is a little more optimal fuel source to run off of. So that's why I've kept it so high.
Did the first one include the eggs?
Yes. It was
Okay,
four eggs.
But no eggs anymore, right?
No, I don't. Yeah.
That's your change in cholesterol.
Probably. I don't know how much cholesterol is in one egg.
I don't either, but I would assume that's the big drop in your cholesterol that they've marked. I don't know what the difference in sodium would be unless it has something, and you're not eating the queso anymore, right? You're eating.
Yeah, I don't even think there was that much sodium in that. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure without looking at it and knowing, is it the exact, brand, kind, whatever.
Here's the other big one you probably missed, the sugar one. Most people would see 130 grams of sugar and like lose their freaking mind.
Right. But we know what kind of sugars it is. So
yes.
Yeah.
God sugars, the good ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now we haven't gained any weight and we're sleeping.
So yeah, before I made the switch.
And before?
So before I started adding the carbohydrates again, I dropped down to 169 at one point, and then I got back up to like 173, and I was kind of holding around there or whatever. And now, after adding the carbohydrates, I'm at consistently pretty much 170 pounds every day. And I'm really just trying to stay there because I
would say that's
I got
probably,
abs, and yeah, I don't need to be much skinnier.
Right.
Let me pull up the micronutrient one too.
Yeah. Or you're going to need even more new clothes.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's ridiculous already. Oh, nope, I pulled up the right one. So yeah, there's like the vitamin C. It's at 150 now. The vitamin A is a lot lower though, which is, I don't know what to think of that. what would have had all the vitamin A? The eggs?
Yeah, probably.
Here's the thing. You can, on this animal-based diet, you can still have eggs and like raw cheese. Just eggs I'd never digest very well. They always kind of upset my stomach.
Yeah.
And then I'm not real big on dairy. And I cut the reason I cut like the cheese and stuff is because it would have sent the calories through the roof. Like I don't think I would have gotten as much fruit in as I'm comfortable with like intaking now. Like I almost feel like the more fruit, the better. So yeah, I would rather just trade off those carbohydrates for berries instead of cheese. That was another thing too. He said my iron was high. And I was like,
Red meat.
well, he said like that's always not necessarily the case. It's like it wasn't even that high, I don't think. He said it's very common for males. Yeah. They're lucky I'm not like throwing their name under the bus or anything. If anyone wants to contact me and ask where it was so they stay away from it, I will gladly share that with them. But that place was kind of a joke.
Or if anyone hears this and has someone who better understands, I'm not opposed to hearing a different opinion. I'm just not interested in a supplement salesman.
Yeah, same here.
So,
did you see the potassium was like, I don't know what their range is really, but like it says it's closer to their range. I would think that's better too there.
And that could be your cramps, that could be
right. That's
and I got to thinking about
better.
the potassium taking me, to the cramps made me think about the when you were talking about the changes in the heart palpitations, the epinephrine and the norepinephrine being out of check could also have increased. And I know before you started this, you saw a cardiologist.
Mm-hmm.
That was definitely a mama scare, right? And I just wonder if there was already some imbalance going on there too, with all the other, complex nutritional issues. And then, there's a possibility. Right. Well.
All right. That's pretty much all I have. You got anything else?
I don't. It was a lot of information. Hopefully somebody hung with us this long to, hear all of this. And if anything, it helps them dive a little deeper into what they're thinking and, to know, I guess, that optimal health is always a continual search, and listening to our body is key. Like just knowing what's, something's not right. And maybe, who knows, maybe we'll dig a little deeper into the research in digestive and gut health, and we'll have a little more to share, because I do think that some important keys in knowing what's going on. I think the more we understand about our bodies and the way our body uses the fuels we give it is super important. So this has been fun.
Absolutely. Yeah. I will touch on that real quick. One thing I had mentioned before, talk about how I eat now, like why I started drinking coffee again, is because on, pretty much a meat-based diet, it was really hard to go to the bathroom. And that's also another improvement I've seen from adding the berries in. It's like every day, same time now. So that's much. Yeah. The gut microbiome is a very complex thing. So maybe we should dive into that on, one of these next ones, but thanks for.
And I do.
Go ahead.
I have one more.
Yep.
One more. Yeah, I do think too, as we alluded back to in the beginning of it, that adding that sunshine,
Absolutely.
increasing those hormones, and just having something to look forward to, and giving ourselves that time is also key. Like I've said that all along. There always has to be a reason to move forward and a reason to look to something. And I think also that trip was perfectly timed in the midst of trying to figure all this out. So sunshine's always a friend in small doses. Yeah, we can tell Stacey that in small doses.
Well, yeah, because she got fried. Yeah, that's something it was like really hard for us to come back here. Like both of us kind of went through like a short little depression stint. We're like, God, Missouri weather sucks, and like the fruit here tastes like crap compared to the stuff in Florida. Like anything around the sun, like just makes you feel so much better, especially when you're doing fun stuff down there like we were. So yeah, I would definitely encourage that for anyone else too. Yeah,
getaways are important. Good for our mental health and our body. So, all right, that's it.
All right, Cool. Thank you. That was
Thanks.
very good.
Bye-bye.
See ya.